Hey, everybody, and good afternoon to you. I'm Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson, joining you with a live update on Hurricane Delta, joining you remotely right now, so we don't have our studio camera turned on. But of course, we've got all the info here. We want to get you updated with Delta. It's about 24 to 28 hours away from landfall. It looks like Louisiana is going to be, unfortunately, in the crosshairs of Delta in these next 24 to 30 hours. So let's get you updated on what's going on. We'll try and answer some questions if you've got those as well. And we'll have live coverage throughout the afternoon and through the duration of Delta's approach to the United States through tomorrow and this weekend. So we've got a look at the app there on the left-hand side of your screen. Matt Highland, of course, driving the bus for me again today, and Matt's going to control the app for me. So Matt, let's kind of zoom in a little bit, get a little closer to the actual center of Delta, and we can talk about some things. So Delta is stronger as of 11 a.m. today. The winds now sustained at 105 miles an hour. And as you look at this, you can see that we've got some of those deep reds on the north side and on the south side of the hurricane, but also we're seeing a little of that wraparound coming to the west and a little bit to the east. So when we talk about these strengthening hurricanes, we refer to those donut-shaped convection areas of convection. So this morning, we've seen some bursts there, and the recon hunters or the recon data is reflecting that this is, we've seen a drop in the pressure, and we've also seen an uptick in the winds, which was all anticipated. We expected Delta to get stronger today and really look its most menacing today before it starts to likely transition into a slightly weaker hurricane, but not by much, as it approaches Louisiana and Texas's Gulf Coast in these next 24 hours or so. So Matt, let's switch over to the live sweeping radar, and we'll take a look at that. And you can see that we're starting to see a little bit of rain coming into view, of course, just on the outer fringes of the ground-based radar in the U.S. So not a whole lot to see, but we're starting to see some light to moderate rain moving across the coastal parts of Louisiana through extreme eastern Texas near Galveston. There's been some light showers in the area, and we've also seen that southward to Port Lavaca and into Corpus Christi. We've got a couple of surfline cameras we're going to show you. Let's start with Matagorda in Texas, and the little bit of an increased surf there. There's also been some clouds overhead. You can see that. This will of course be changing to a stormier picture as we head through the remainder of tonight, and especially into tomorrow when Delta gets its closest point to Texas before turning north. And then we've got Corpus Christi, which actually looks pretty good. It looks like a typical beach day, maybe a little overcast and with a cloud deck overhead. Of course, those are some of these higher cloud tops that are blowing off of the top of Delta. But overall, it looks really nice in Corpus Christi. But of course, we're expecting that to likely change somewhat as well. Now, remember, Corpus Christi, the coastline of Texas, is not expecting direct impacts from Delta. So you'll have peripheral impacts as we head through tonight and into tomorrow. But, we can't rule out some of those squalls and some of those feeder bands, depending on how close Delta gets to Texas before it turns. So we're going to talk about that as well and try and figure out just how close it will get to Texas. And it will get fairly close before we see that turn towards the north. We've got some video we got yesterday on Twitter from the airport in Cancun. So we'll show you that next, because folks were trying to get out of the airport before Delta made landfall in Cancun. Fortunately for the folks, this is a high tourist destination around the world, Cancun and Cozumel. Fortunately, a lot of people were able to get out, and the damage, although it's significant in several spots of the Yucatan Peninsula, is not as bad as it was once feared. So these folks, thankfully, were able to, or at least some folks were able to get out before Delta made landfall over Mexico. All right, I've got the live 5 radar scans up again. We'll take another vantage point here, and we're back over to the U.S. now, and you can see some of those embedded heavier rains that have been moving through parts of just through coastal Louisiana. Lake Charles, just south of there near Cameron. We've been dealing with some moderate rain, but again, nothing too intense there. Rain rates are really low. I'll toggle on a couple of random spots here. So about a third of 3/100ths of an inch of rain an hour. That's certainly not much and not expected to do much. But of course, all of that is going to change as we head into these next several hours, and especially as we get into tomorrow. So here's a look at the infrared. The recon Air Force hunters have actually found a 35 nautical mile wide eye. You can see the eye here on the infrared. And you may recall a couple of days ago when this was a category 4, there's the eye right there, right in there. So you may recall a couple of days ago when this was sustained winds of 145, the actual eye itself was only about 2 nautical miles, or about 5 miles across. So we've seen Delta grow larger in size and a little bit in strength. I've been trying to, correlate between the two because it can sound confusing when you hear someone say Hurricane Delta is larger. That automatically makes people assume, okay, it's a bigger hurricane. It's larger in size, but not necessarily in strength. We have seen it get stronger today in strength as well, but we've also seen the wind field expand out. And that means more areas of the country will be impacted by Delta as it comes into view tomorrow. So the hurricane force winds extend out about 40 to 50 miles from the center, and the tropical storm force winds extend out about 140 to 150 miles from the center. So that's a fairly big chunk of real estate that's going to be having these tropical storm force winds that have already been impacted by several hurricanes this hurricane season, and this will be our 10th named storm that is going to make landfall tomorrow. So if you do, and again, this is a rough rudimentary estimate here, about 370 miles away from Louisiana. And so we expect at this point landfalls somewhere in the neighborhood between 2 and 5 p.m. tomorrow. Again, we'll tweak that exact timing once we get this a little closer to the U.S. and it's picked up on the ground-based radar. We'll have a much easier way of checking the estimates and determining just exactly when and where it's going to come in at. So the latest information from the Hurricane Center, again, sustained winds at 105 miles an hour, the pressure down to 968. So that's down from the earlier advisory this morning at 5. The movement northwest towards the northwest at 14 miles an hour. And that's a significant switch from yesterday. We had a west to northwesterly trajectory. Today, northwest should stay on that general path through the afternoon. So it's going to look like it's heading towards Texas, but tomorrow it's expected to turn more towards the north and become more north-northwest, and then eventually northeast once it makes landfall. So I know it's going to look pretty menacing for Texas as we head through the day today. And I mentioned this yesterday that, we'll see that shift happen in about 12 to 18 hours where we see it starting to interact with that trough that's over the southern plains. And I'll show you that as well. So here's a look at the newest path from the Hurricane Center. And again, all indications are we should see this increase to a major hurricane again by tomorrow. Could even see that happen today. Now, we can't rule out a rapid intensifying hurricane. It's not likely to happen, at least on the guidance that we're looking at today. The official intensity forecast is actually from the Hurricane Center is actually higher than what some of the models are predicting, like the SHIPS model, which is one of the benchmarks that we go to when we're looking at intensity tracks. But the indications are that this will probably not rapidly intensify. You never say never, especially in 2020. But it does look like this will become a major hurricane again for a brief period of time before it gets closer to Louisiana's coast, where the shelf there, the continental shelf, has had some upwelling from all the previous hurricanes this season, and the sea surface temperatures are not quite as warm there as they are in the deep central Gulf. So we think the slightly cooler sea surface temperatures, and I'll show you those in a second, as well as some of the southwest shear is going to help disrupt a little bit of the top of the hurricane, and that should limit it from getting stronger before it makes landfall. So that's the best case scenario. Of course, we'd like to see it come in even weaker than a Category 2, but indications are that that is likely going to be the case. And then you can see it moving through the southern Mississippi and southern Tennessee river valleys as we head into late into Sunday and into next week. We'll still be talking about the remnant low of Delta before it becomes completely post-tropical. Excuse me. All right, let me show you the current watches and warnings from the National Hurricane Center, and the hurricane warnings were issued last night. And of course, we'll see these likely not deviate too much in case there's a bobble in the path. Likely this is not going to change all that much. We've got tropical storm warnings in Texas, pretty much from the Galveston Bay area over to right near Port Arthur, and then over to Morgan City is the hurricane warning, and then you can see around the southern and southeastern boot of Louisiana over to Mississippi is the tropical storm warning. So likely not to see too many deviations in this until unless there's some type of significant change in the path. And then here's a look at the storm surge warning, which was also issued last night, and it includes a big chunk of real estate. Now, the largest concern for that 11-foot storm surge, because I got a big swing here, 4 to 11 feet. It's primarily going to be in Vermilion Bay. So that's where we think the largest risk is for that 9 to 11 surge. So right in here on that northeastern quadrant, if Delta's eye comes in near Cameron, again, remember, we get the worst of that storm surge on the northeastern side. So Vermilion Bay could get that 7 to 11-foot surge. And then we're talking probably about a 4 to 6-foot surge here in Grand Isle, and about 2 to 4 in New Orleans through the Lake Pontchartrain, maybe around 2 feet. And we could see that extend over to parts of Mississippi, where it'd be in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 feet. And again, that all kind of depends on the trajectory, but we're going to see some increase in the surge today. So we'll start to see, and probably have already seen that in that area of Louisiana. We've probably seen the waters coming up, and that will continue to be the case. It's a slow rise in the beginning, and then the surge comes in relatively quickly once the hurricane gets a little closer. But remember, the storm surge comes in before the hurricane makes landfall. So, if you're in these areas, and again, heavy marshland through a big chunk of the real estate through here, but a lot of folks do live in Grand Isle and back into Cameron. It's a more sparsely populated. Lake Charles, of course, a big city for Louisiana, but we do think that the surge with this one is going to impact more people, because I talked about this last night. The hurricane itself is going to be at its most intense today, but it's going to continue to pull the Gulf of Mexico waters with it as it approaches Louisiana. So even though it may come in weaker with winds near 105, it's still taking all of that wall of water with it when it was a powerful hurricane today. So it's going to be impacting big chunks of real estate, and you can see this here better illustrated. So greater than 9 feet with those areas shaded in red, and then in the Cameron, Lake Charles area, anywhere from 3 to 6 feet. Now, not in downtown Lake Charles, we're not talking about 3 feet, but we're talking closer towards the coast there. We could be talking about a 3 foot to maybe a 6 foot surge, depending on the exact entry point of Delta. And then as we head further towards the east, it gets lower, around 3 feet near Chauvin, Grand Isle, about 1 to 3, and New Orleans area back into southern Mississippi, maybe over into Mobile Bay, about 1 foot. So we'll see that this part of the forecast, again, will get tweaked as we head into tomorrow and we get closer to an imminent landfall. So the sea surface temperatures, we talked about this yesterday, and we've been showing this quite a bit over these last few days. So, the magic number there for a true prime grade A breeding ground is around 82 to 84 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can see that already Delta is in a prime breeding spot to have warm sea surface temperatures. So we're in the 80s here, and we're expecting to keep things in the 80s as it heads up in this general area. But notice how it turns from yellow to blue, and these are just slight nuances here, but some of the shelf here is in the upper 70s. So right along the immediate coast there, just offshore of Louisiana, the sea surface temperatures are in the upper 70s. So the thinking is, and the logic is, that we'll see some cooler temperatures here, and that will be less energy for Delta to tap into. So we think that this will help level off the intensity, perhaps weaken it a bit. And we also have that southwest wind shear that's going to be coming into play as well. And so all of those factors would be beneficial to keeping this a less potent hurricane. Been showing the Euro a lot these last couple of days. Here is the latest run with the Euro. The blue there is the official Hurricane Center's path, the black line, the center of where the eye is forecast to come in. So, watch as the futurecast goes in time, and then you can see right around, say, 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, 4:30, we see potential landfall, and then still creating a large area of rain through the southern Mississippi, Tennessee, and eventually the Ohio River Valley as we head into next week. So it's going to be moving back towards the northeast. It will come off the coast in the mid-Atlantic, more than likely, maybe the Delmarva. So maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to be talking about heavy rains over there. But the immediate concern, of course, will be the storm surge. I think the signature from this hurricane at this point is going to be the large area of geography that will be impacted with this storm surge. So that's going to be what we're going to have to watch as we head through today and into tomorrow when we're expecting the landfall. And then, of course, it will rapidly weaken after that and will be less potent than it is. But in the short term, the biggest concern will be how that surge impacts this area. And don't think Texas isn't out of this as well. We're going to likely see, a surge there, probably in the neighborhood of 1 to 3 feet, depending, again, ultimate track. And then this 5 to 7 inches of rain is a definite for most of Louisiana, parts of southern and central Arkansas, northwestern Mississippi, and up into Tennessee. So there's a fair amount of rain that we're going to be dealing with as we head through the rest of the rest of tomorrow and into Saturday as well. So here's a look at what you can anticipate with a Category 2 hurricane. This is the thinking from the Hurricane Center. The intensity should be right around a 2, so it makes sense that we would get winds around 96 to 110 miles an hour. And we're looking at extensive damage in some areas right where that northeastern eye wall is. So remember, the biggest concern is that northeastern side. That's typically where we get a lot of the worst weather. So that's where the most of that damage will be. But remember, this area got Laura earlier this year and got Sally. Parts of this area got parts of Sally. Laura was worse for Louisiana. So it's already hurricane battered geography, land. And so they're getting another hurricane. And really, I think that's going to be, I think one of the biggest problems will be the power outages, because they've just restored power to many areas of this part of Louisiana. And some areas, I think, don't even have power yet. So it's going to be extremely vulnerable to damages. And, that's what I think the big concern will be in terms of long-term days without power, and possibly even weeks. So here's a look at, let me get past this one, and I think I've got the water vapor. Yep, I've got the water vapor next. So we're going to talk about the steering currents. And if you've been watching our coverage, we use this map an awful lot. It's a great resource. It shows the amount of moisture content in the atmosphere. It's like looking from the top of a cylinder all the way down to the surface. So we've got a ridge of high pressure over here, over Florida in the eastern Gulf. But remember, this is taking a snapshot all the way through several layers of the atmosphere. And then we've got a trough of low pressure, our main driver for Delta. And again, I messed that up in a drawing. So let me see if I can pull that. It's a little, I'd have to, let me start over. Hang on. Let me get my trough a little better. So the trough generally, there we go, in that direction. So the channel between these two, the ridge, and all that, my high pressure went away. There it goes. Okay, so the channel between these two is where we're going to see Delta head. So we're going to see Delta kind of go like this in between these two weather features, the ridge to the right and the trough to the left. So it's going to move, it's going to start to take that turn sometime tomorrow. But as I mentioned, in the short-term forecast, it's going to be looking like it's headed straight towards Texas. So I know a lot of Texans are probably saying, hey, you guys say it's going to Louisiana, but it sure looks like it's coming here. That's because the turn is expected to happen relatively late in this forecast. So, living in Florida my whole life, I have been in the seat that you're sitting in, and I have seen hurricanes several hundred miles off of our coast and have said, when is the turn going to happen? So I know it's a little nerve-wracking, but I can tell you, when we're looking at these products and we're looking at the upper levels of the atmosphere and the driver of Delta, it's very clear to see that this trough will become a player in the steering mechanisms that will turn it northward. But it's not going to happen until sometime tomorrow. We might see that turn a little bit more towards tonight. We might see more of a north-northwest turn tonight, but really more like tomorrow, we're going to see that north to northwesterly component and eventually northeast. So it's going to pick up its forward speed and turn away from Texas and away from Louisiana relatively soon after it makes landfall. But until then, that's where everyone in Texas still needs to keep an eye to the sky here, keep up with the forecast, because it could get closer to Texas than forecast. Most of the guidance is 100% in agreement that this is going to be a southwestern Louisiana hurricane. There is some possibility, again, some possibility we could see this be an extreme eastern Texas hurricane. But all indications are that this is going to be something that's going to be affecting Southwest Louisiana. So keep that in mind. Keep the preps. If you've got to take some preps, make sure that you're still doing those, because I know it's a lot of work and you don't want to have to do it. And you've got your real life and your real job and real kids you got to handle, and you don't want to have to handle a hurricane. But when you're looking at this type of scenario, when a hurricane's going to be that close to you, and again, Houston, don't think that you're not going to get in on some of the action, because you should be seeing we're going to see some of that water push back out of Galveston Bay on the other side, on the back side of the hurricane. So I don't know if you all remember when Laura came in, we saw part of Galveston Bay empty out, and we could see that happen, not on the same, I don't think on the same scale that we saw with Laura, because this is a little bit of a weaker hurricane, but we're going to see those the winds wrapping around on the other side of let me zoom in here, of Delta, and I do think we're going to see, see some of that water getting pushed back out of the bay as we head into tomorrow. So you can see when I zoom in here tomorrow night, heavy rains in the Houston area, and we saw flooding. It floods relatively easily there in Houston in several areas. So I can't rule out some flash flooding. Can't rule out some of these spots that are going to be impassable. On this path, it would keep Corpus Christi out of the way, Port Lavaca out of the way. This would be primarily a southeastern Texas event, but I do want you to know that you're going to be close enough that you're definitely going to get some wind and rain out of this hurricane tomorrow and into the next couple of days as well. All right, let me take a look at, let me put the infrared back on. I'm going to take a look at some of the questions. Matt, if you can see any, because I'm not able to see them, go ahead. I don't know if I can hear you, Matt, but let me look here real quick on Facebook. And Matt, if you are talking to me, I can't hear you. So I'm going to try and pull you back in a second. But let me look through Facebook real quick. Okay, someone talking about Pensacola. No, I think Pensacola is going to be okay on this scenario. I think, Florida Panhandle for the most part is not going to be a huge issue. Matt, if you can put the questions, okay, there you go. Let me see if I can read those off my phone, because I can't read them live. Let's see. Someone's saying Lake Charles just can't get a break this season. Isn't that the truth? I tell you, my heart goes out to Louisiana. I know they've had such an incredibly hard year with the hurricanes, and here we are again. The only upshot is this is a little less of a potent hurricane than we had with Laura. But the problem, is that this is, this place is already hurricane weary. And, the last thing that you guys need is another hurricane. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do about that. Okay. I don't think, okay. Someone's saying, I can't read. I don't think people understand that 12 inches of water is twice as tall as the average, 12 feet of water is twice as tall as the average person. That's true. So yeah, when we're talking about a storm surge of 11 feet, so I always use the analogy of your house. So your house is, roughly, depending on, on a standard house, your first floor is roughly 10 feet high. So if you're talking about 11-foot storm surge, you're talking about completely over the ceiling of your living room and into your second floor if you have 2 floors. If you don't have 2 floors, you are really in trouble. So that's why, there's evacuation orders in place. People are trying to, get out of harm's way, because again, it's a big deal. 11-foot, 7 to 11-foot storm surge is absolutely life-threatening. A 3-foot storm surge can move cars off of, if you leave your car in a parking lot and you say, okay, I'm just going to leave my car here for the hurricane, a 3-foot storm surge could loft your car and move it to a completely different part of the parking lot or even further. So, it's not something you want to mess around with by any means. And we definitely want folks to be listening to the officials, because really your local officials have the best idea of the type of preparations that you need to be taking, and they know your topography of your I'm sorry, I'm trying to read comments while I'm talking. I'm having a hard time doing two things at once. But anyways, your local officials are trying to guide you in the best way to get out of harm's way. So if you're in those evacuation zones, I live in Florida. I've had to evacuate several times. I know it's a pain. It costs money to evacuate, and then lo and behold, you may not have needed to evacuate. But when we're just not certain on the exact entry point, and you're in that zone where emergency management officials are saying, hey, you need to get out. You really do, because you have to remember, I talk about this too, when the winds get higher than 35 miles an hour, rescue crews can't come get you. So if you call 911 tomorrow afternoon at noon because your winds are around 70, 80 miles an hour, they can't come get you. So you're stuck at your house. So that's why today is the day. You've got the rest of today. It's going to be pretty quiet weather-wise throughout the afternoon today, even tonight. It's really tomorrow morning that it's really going to downgrade pretty quickly once Delta gets a little closer. So I'm going to take this live stream down because meteorologist Mike Linden is going to be joining you guys this afternoon around 2 p.m. So I want to give a little bit of time between the two live streams. I didn't see any huge questions jump out, but if I see any, I'll go back in and answer it. Just some housekeeping notes. Mike will be with you at 2 and at 5 o'clock this afternoon for the updates, and then I'll be joining you again tonight for the duration of the evening. And then tomorrow we have full coverage. We're fully staffed. All 3 meteorologists will be on deck, including Stephanie Lauber, and we will have a full staff behind the scenes, a production team as well, and we will do our best to keep you guys up to date, bringing you video, live pictures, storm chasers perhaps, all of that as we navigate through these next 24 to 30 hours as Hurricane Delta moves towards Louisiana's coast. All right, you guys, that's going to do it for me for now. I hope you guys have some couple hours here to maybe rest a bit before you've got to hunker down for this hurricane, and stay safe in the Gulf Coast, you guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here this afternoon.